Well, welcome to the Washington Township Historical Society meeting of the 28th of March, 2022. And I assume we're alive and well, and we're on with the appropriate sound effects. Tonight we have a discussion on the history of Mission San Jose. And Patricia, if you could introduce yourself, I think that would be ideal. We pledge allegiance to the flag, but I hung that up in front to hopefully convince people to come in that we were open for business. So Patricia, let me turn it over to you.
Okay, I presented this talk at the 225 mission celebration in the talk series that they have. And so I'm repeating it here. And it's quite amazing because since I gave that talk, I've talked with more people to further the stories. I got more connections of people, so this will be really great. And so I'd just like to say that Mission San Jose is a special place, and it's part of the greater community of this particular time in history. When I started thinking of this project, first, I thought of focusing on landmarks and dates in times past, but the history of Mission San Jose and other places that we call home or with which we connect are more than just dates and buildings, because we connect these facts with the people who lived here and the lives they led. Today, we'll learn about and celebrate the community and the people who were here before us, who are here now, and who will be here in the future. The community where people live, work, learn, celebrate, play, and pray. I was born in the Irvington area, and my family roots are there on a family dairy farm. But I came to Mission San Jose as a child to attend church with my family in the old wooden St. Joseph's Church that was built in 1868. My religious classes were in a room in the old Adobe Mission just next door, and we were taught by the Dominican sisters who lived in the convent just behind the church. Then, as a young mother and later a grandmother, I was drawn to hike Mission Peak. And after retirement, I returned to volunteer at the Museum of Local History, which is just a few blocks from the mission. I came here because of my interest in history and the curiosity to find out more about the place that I call home and the many people who lived here before. Today, I hope to share with you some of the gold nuggets of local history, the family stories that have been told over and over again. Most of the pictures, so something's not happening here. There we go. Most of the pictures that you'll see today are from the archives from Dr. Fisher's collection and others. I've also gleaned from the writings of Philip Holmes, who wrote the book 2 Centuries of Mission San Jose, 1797 to 1997, which was written and released during the Mission San Jose bicentennial 25 years ago. So let's begin. The town of Mission San Jose, here we go, is located at the base of the 2,517-foot Mission Peak, the area's greatest natural landmark and very easy to find. The views from the peak are great, and people are always scaling the peak. This is a picture of the climate here is mild, sometimes subtropical, excuse me. This 1950 aerial looking east shows the town of Mission San Jose in the upper right-hand corner. You can see it right here. It's located to the south of the San Francisco Bay, and to your left is Mission Pass. Here we are. Which has always provided easy access to Livermore and the Central Valley and beyond. Mission Creek flows down the hills. If I can find it right here, there's Mission Creek. and connects with Irvington and onto the San Francisco Bay. Washington Creek and Sabercat Creek. This is another picture. It's the same picture, a little bit different. But this is Sabercat Creek and Washington Creek. You can still see little parts of it. All flow in to the bay. So why did or do people come here? This is a question. What was it like when they arrived, and how did they adapt? This is an overview of the history of Mission San Jose with highlights of major events, trends in various time periods, and brief stories of people who lived here through those times. The dates flow because individuals and families lived here from a short time to generations. The people and the stories are interconnected. 1846 to 1880 was a time of upheaval. This is after the Ohlone lives were changed forever with the coming of the Spanish and the Mission Padres. Then after the Spanish lost control of the lands of Mexico, and after a short period of about 20 years, the ownership of the land again changed into the hands of the United States, and not without controversy. These 1868 photographs gives you an idea of what the town looked like before the 1868 earthquake. But step back to 1846. Jose Vallejo and his family lived in their two-story adobe across from the Mission Church. The mission was in disrepair, and some of the adobe buildings around it were crumbling. There were about 200 or 300 inhabitants in town, probably Native Americans, Mexicans, Californios, and others. There were few places with services or lodging for travelers.
I would like to make an interruption here. There is somebody who is named Museum 2. That might be John Weed. Mute yourself. There's a lot of background noise. Thank you.
Great. After the gold discovery in the foothills of California, the crumbling adobes were converted into stores, saloons, restaurants, livery stables, and simple inns to meet the needs of travelers. Most houses were made of adobe. Newcomers occupied the adobe houses or traveled to get wood for new buildings. Some sent for prefab buildings that came around the horn. The post office was established in 1850. In 1880, after the 1868 earthquake, many of the adobe buildings were replaced with wooden structures, and the town center was active with people and businesses. So this is John.
Museum 2 is still not muted, and there's a lot of background noise.
Well, it's not us. The microphone is turned off.
Okay.
John and Elizabeth Horner came in 1847 and settled along Mission Creek. Horner came to farm the land. Here's a description of his first home. He rented land from an Indian and built a small slab house with a dirt floor. There were 2 rooms with a chimney on the division wall, which accommodated a fireplace in each room. The doors were rough slabs hung with rawhide hinges, and the windows were covered with muslin. The Horner's home was crude, but it was a haven during a storm. Their first child was born the following year. Just imagine how difficult it was to have been there in those first years for the Horners. Horner traveled to Oakland to get both posts and rails to build strong fences to protect their crops from wild animals and the wandering ex-mission cattle and horses. With the help of the local native people, he fenced, plowed, and planted potatoes, onions, turnips, cabbages, watermelons, and muskmelons. There were setbacks, but after a few years, there was a demand for fresh produce, and everything he raised brought a good price. For the next 30 years, Horner and his family gained and lost fortunes. He led the way for large-scale farming techniques and had hundreds of acres under production. John and his brother William became wealthy from selling products to markets in San Francisco and to miners on their way to the gold fields. They also built a flour mill, operated a stagecoach and steamboat called the Union, and much more. John established Driscoll Road and built a two-story home here, as well as a home for his brother William, which you see right there, which is still there. The Horners left for Hawaii in 1879 to operate a sugarcane plantation. The Creek Walk behind Mission San Jose High School incorporates informational plaques that are fun to read. That's a picture of the Creek Walk. Elias Beard came in 1849 from New York. He was drawn to the gold fields, but he soon learned that he could make a living on the rich land and commercial possibilities in Mission San Jose and the surrounding area. Elias purchased a disputed title to the Mission Orchards, grounds and buildings, which led to a long period of litigation. The next year, he was joined by his wife, Jane, and children who traveled by ship and then across the Isthmus of Panama to join Elias in Mission San Jose. They created a home there with a beautiful garden. Elias planted vegetables and expanded the fruit orchards. It's said that one potato on the Beard place weighed 5 pounds and provided a meal for 9 men. Beard also promoted agriculture in the state and was instrumental in starting large-scale vineyards in the Mission San Jose area. The Beards were known for their hospitality. Henry Smith, later called the father of Alameda County, opened a store in the old Mission adobe buildings, and Beard partnered with him. Beard also partnered with John Horner and helped found the California Agriculture Society. He had several business ventures with both made and lost lots of money and land. From 1850 to 1865, it was a confusing time. Several people claimed the ownership of the same property, or they bought the property more than once, or they squatted on land and refused to leave. This turmoil was settled by the awarding of land patents by the US government in 1867. Possession of the Mission land and the buildings were also in dispute. Earlier, 28 1/3 acres of the Mission property was returned to the church. Elias Beard farmed the land from there all the way to Palm Avenue. He built a large home, established beautiful gardens, and he called them Palmdale. The Mission is and was the hub of the town and has seen many transformations. It was damaged in the 1868 earthquake, and a wood frame Gothic revival church was put in its place and served the parish for more than 100 years until it was moved in 1979 to San Mateo for the reconstruction of the old adobe church. These are 2 of the 3 schools in Mission San Jose. The first one was constructed at Mission Pass. The second one up top here was built in 1868 across from today's museum on Anza Street and what was called at that time Vine. The third was built in 1913, right here, on Mission Boulevard, and in 1956, it became the first City Hall of Fremont. Joseph Sunderer was a cobbler who immigrated from Germany to Mission San Jose in 1867 to escape the Black Plague. He arrived in Mission San Jose and began making boots, shoes, and slippers. He married Rosa, also from Germany, and they had 4 children. He built a home and a shop on Vallejo Street, which is Mission Boulevard. Perhaps his best customers were the Dominican sisters. In 1901, in a 6-month period, he mended 286 pairs of shoes for them. Joseph was a jack of all trades, and he was known as the unofficial town mayor. He was an insurance agent, a pound master, which meant he helped to round up the stray horses, cows, and sheep. And he was a road overseer to build and maintain roads. He was a member of the deputy council. He helped start the volunteer fire department, and he was a school board trustee for 30 years. 1880 to 1920 was a period that brought boom and bust cycle with transitions in land ownership. Farming included the development of large vineyards and large-scale wine productions, which later transitioned into the breaking up of large into smaller land parcels. This was also the beginning of fruit, vegetable, and dairy farming. People from diverse European nationalities came to town, and some local boys went off to fight in World War I. Juan and Julia Gallegos were wine merchants who came from Costa Rica and bought the Beard property in 1881. They renovated the Beard house, built a new home for Julia's father, who was the former president of Costa Rica, Mr. Montalegre, and planted a 600-acre vineyard that covered the slopes from Mission San Jose to Irvington. They constructed a 3-story winery located now on Osgood and Washington Boulevard, and you can still see the remnants of it today. An avenue of olive trees lined the road from the Gallegos home to the main station in Irvington, today's Olive Avenue. The 7 Gallegos children had their own tutor and governess. The family became known for the hospitality. They hosted many parties and events, and in 1897, they hosted a free barbecue for 10,000 people during the centennial celebration of the mission. Because of bad business deals, the drop in wine prices, and the invasion of the phylloxera aphids that killed many of the vines, Gallego divided and sold off smaller parcels of land, which became privately owned winery operations along Washington Boulevard. And then he sold the Palmdale property to Henry Lockman in 1905. The Gallegos family moved the large Montalegre house across Mission Boulevard to a property beside the mission today, the church, and the family lived there. It remained there until years later when it was moved and renovated, and today it's a private residence on Witherly Lane near Ohlone College. It's called the Gallegos home, but it was really the home of Montalegre, the father-in-law. The property that's Ohlone College, which opened in 1978 or 9, changed ownership every 20 to 30 years. Charles and Kate McIver purchased the Peak Vineyard from Joseph Palmer in 1888. Vineyards were expanded to 1,000 acres and renamed Linda Vista. Their wines were known throughout the world, and the McIvers built a beautiful home and garden park. Then it all fell apart. There was the drop in wine prices, the aphid invasion, their new home burned down, and the McIvers divorced. Kate, who changed her name back to Stevens, and her mother took over the farm. They built a new home, changed their farming focus. With local help, they planted and processed prunes and olives. Tom and Blanche Witherly purchased the property, and when the prices of peas and prunes fell during the Depression, they turned the beautiful grounds into an amusement park, you can see right here, with a dance pavilion, a swimming pool, rides, and barbecue pits. Next, Ed Huddleston, a gentleman farmer, bought the property and hired a manager to operate the orchards and dairy. He built a new home on the hill, which is now the headquarters for the Ohlone College Foundation. And the Stevens home still sits on the tree-lined pathway up to the college. This is the Stevens home. The Dominican Sisters of Germany purchased the property behind the mission from the Archdiocese in 1891. There they opened a school. The convent and the school has had its ups and downs throughout the years, but it was always self-supporting. The sisters raised their own food. They raised chickens and turkeys and produced olive oil and wine for market. The sisters taught catechism in the community and are affiliated with St. Joseph's School. Through the years, they have added many buildings to their property to accommodate their growing and changing programs. The sisters also operated an orphanage, and in 1910, they relocated to the St. Mary's of the Palms on Washington Boulevard. You can see it right here. The school went through changes from an orphanage to a boarding school with day students. The school was the Sarasana for those with intellectual and developmental challenges when it closed in 1967. Ohlone College held classes there for 7 years, from 1968 to 74. Then it moved to its permanent campus into the former Linda Vista property. You can still see the avenue of palm trees along Adelina Common that is now the housing development. Trina Marine Ruano, a local Native American woman of Ohlone descent, was a student there. When she was 8 years old, her father died, so she was sent to the orphanage to be raised by the nuns. It was difficult for her, but she finished school and left at the age 17 to make her own way in the world. Trina was glad she had been given a good education, and she had the tenacity to celebrate her Native American heritage. The town changed dramatically during this time. There were two major fires. In 1884, a bakery fire destroyed both the east and west sides of Vallejo Street. Another fire 10 years later in 1894 again destroyed the east side of the street. Joseph Sunderer rebuilt his exact shop and home twice. It still stands today on Mission Boulevard. There's a great old story that when the town was on fire in 1884, Sunderer used his quick wit to suggest that wine from the local vintner be used to save the wooden church, and it worked. Most historical buildings that remain today were built after 1884 or 1894. The top two pictures are 1900 and 1912 with, as you can see, electric poles. The parade picture is the Holy Ghost Festival in 1890, and the second fire that destroyed, before the second fire destroyed the west side of the town. Sunder is pictured here. Let's see if I can see my, right here. Sunder is pictured here in the automobile in 1910. Joseph and Laura Sinak lived with their family of 5 on Ellsworth Street. They were both employed by the Gallegos estate where they met. Laura was from the Azore Islands and Joseph was from France. They also sold liquor and olive oil out of their house. Their daughter, Anna, recalled what it was like living in Mission San Jose. This is a summary of some of her memories. She remembered the terror of the big fire in 1894 and the joy of the centennial celebration in 1897. The 1906 earthquake was so strong that people thought it was the end of the world. There was no indoor bathroom and everyone bathed in the family wash tub. Nearly everyone on the block had an open well. The water was cool and Anna's mother would put perishable food in a bucket and let them down into until they touched the cold water. That was their refrigeration. Most people had their own cow. There was an old bachelor who herded the cows for a small fee. He would start at one end of town in the early morning and gather up the cows, herd them along the road to eat then take them home in the evening for milking. There were different peddlers who sold berries or fish or fruits and vegetables or notions, and there was a bakery wagon selling bread, but most people made their own. They bought flour and sugar in 100-pound sacks from Sol Erman, and the post office was in his store. People visited, played cards, listened to the music box, and sometimes attended dances, suppers, and parties. Most people walked everywhere. If you didn't have a horse, you could rent a buggy at the livery stable. The county provided horse-drawn water sprinklers to wet down the dusty roads. Tanks of water were spaced along the road with troughs so travelers could water their horses. This was Mission San Jose in early 1900. From 1920 to 1950 was a time of depression and World War II. Mission San Jose was a sleepy farming town community where everyone knew everyone. There were many shops in town, and the Portuguese celebrations were the highlight of the year with the crowning of the Queen, a parade, music, dancing, and food. The Portuguese festival took place annually for 70 years, from 1880 to 1950. The photos on the left is the IDES Hall and Gazebo, which was on Ellsworth, and it was later torn down in the 1970s. This 1950 aerial of Mission San Jose shows how it was a town surrounded by farms. You can see the end of Mission San Jose as a tidy 2-block town right here, and then the orchards and fields. These pictures are from the 1930s during the Depression. Here on the right is the Holy Ghost Festival Parade, as well as a photograph of Charlene Mello's uncle picking peas. The family had rented land at the end of Bryant Street. Regina Denny was involved in many activities in Mission San Jose, including Catholic Daughters, anything to do with the Dominican Sisters. She was a docent at the mission and many years with the Museum of Local History. Her father, Alois Schneider from Germany, was sponsored by his aunt, Maria Königsberger, a Dominican sister. Regina's mother, Marie, and there she is, there's Marie, and Alois both worked for the Dominican Sisters. They lived in the mill house next to the mission. Then they purchased a house on Bryant Street, where Regina and her 2 sisters and brother grew up. She attended St. Mary's of the Palms School and walked across the fields to get to school. When she married, she bought a newly built house on Lamarck Street, just 3 blocks from where she grew up. You could ask Regina about anyone in town, and she knew them all. There's a plaque honoring Regina in the garden between the Mission Museum and the Mission Church. And I also found out that she wrote articles for the News Register. When I interviewed her several years ago, she told me, quote, "We skated on the streets with our metal skates. Boy, we wore out a lot of skates. I remember Mama saying about 4 o'clock, you kids, you have to come in because they are coming home from work. There's going to be traffic, you know." That meant the Mellas and the Susas were coming home, and that meant 3 or 4 cars were coming. That was traffic in the 1940s. Bob and Pauline McIver were the heart of the McIver family and their hardware business. Pauline was born in Newark and raised in Niles. Bob's parents, Burton and Marie McIver, came to Mission San Jose in the 1920s and had 4 children here. Bob's father bought a blacksmith business in the building on Washington Boulevard that is now the photography studio, which is right here. In the early 1950s, shortly after Bob joined the business, they built and opened a new hardware store. Next door which now houses the Mission Coffee Roasting Company. Gail Stewart runs the coffee business and is proud to say it's Fremont's living room. In 1990, they built and moved into the new store on Ellsworth Street. Bob and Pauline were known by almost everyone in town. They were generous people who always made sure you got what you needed. Their store was family run for 96 years and closed in 2018. 1950 to 1970 was the post-World War II years and a time of prosperity and phenomenal increase in population that resulted in a rapid expansion, replacing farms and subdivisions, shopping centers, schools, and traffic. Newcomers came to the Bay Area for the available job opportunities. Mission Elementary School on Mission Boulevard jumped from 4 to more than 20 teachers and had double sessions. A new and larger school was built on Bryant Street in 1956. That same year, the city of Fremont incorporated, joining the 5 towns of Centerville, Irvington, Niles, Mission San Jose, and Warm Springs to form that one city. The first Fremont city offices moved into the old Mission building on Mission Boulevard, and between 1956 and 64, 6 more public schools opened in just the Mission San Jose area. Richard Lincoln opened the first shopping center in about 1950 and developed a housing property near the shopping center. You can see it. These aerials show the new stages of the growth. The aerial shows the construction up here of the 680 freeway, the new school, there's the new school, the shopping center, which is right here, and a Sabercat Creek. What happened to, oh, here we go. Let me see. Yeah, and let's see. I think I'm missing what I was talking about here. Oh, here. There we go. Mission San Jose High School was built in 1956, and the Chadbourne School, which you can see here, is part of it. And this is the Mission Creek Walk now. This is Mission Creek. There was an immense amount of traffic through town during the construction of 680. And this is going through the past. 680 is being constructed. And so during this time, you had a lot of traffic because the 680 freeway filtered down into Mission San Jose before it came through. So, and this is the exchange on Mission Boulevard, I believe. The Sisters of the Holy Family came to Mission San Jose in 1948 and purchased Palmdale Estates. They built their mother house there in 1959, and the 2 Tudor-style houses built by the Best and Starr families were used as administrative and reception centers. And the Sethys know about that, right? The sisters have been a respectful part of the community for more than 70 years. The mother house was recently replaced by private residences, and the sisters built living quarters on a different part of the property. The gardens of Palmdale, once a private part of the convent, are now a public garden. It'd be nice to, if you haven't had a chance, it would be great to go and look at that, but most of you already know about this. This is a story of connections. The pictures are on the right here, are Floyd Dillon, his son Don, and Don's son Don, of Four Winds Growers. The Dillons came in 1954, especially because of the climate, perfect for the growing of dwarf citrus trees, their specialty. They relocated and expanded their nursery operation to Palm Avenue on Mission San Jose from Ventura. The two families, Floyd and Mildred, and their son, Don, and his wife, Mary Ann, also moved with some of their workers, including the Real family. Two of the Real family members are in the center of the picture here. Mike Andrade, pictured here with his mother, Betty, his grandfather came to the United States from Portugal in 1886. It's a long story, but Mike's father, Elmo, grew up in the family home on Ellsworth from the time he was 3 years old, and Mike was born when Elmo and Betty lived in the same house. The picture on the left is of Elmo Andrade, right in here. I think this is him. He was the first paid fireman in the new firehouse, now the museum. He retired from Fremont Fire Department after 40 years of service. So the link is that Mike, right here, went into the service and served in Vietnam. On leave from his grandfather's funeral, he reconnected with Connie Real, who he knew because their parents were friends, and not long after they were married. When Mike returned from the service, he took a job with the Four Winds Growers and remained there until he retired after 43 years. Connie and Mike still live in Mission San Jose. This is Mission San Jose in the 1970s. And the upper right corner is Washington Boulevard coming into town. You can see the Ohlone sign, Ohlone College sign on the right. We have two shots of Mission Boulevard here, taken about 1965. You can see the Mission Bell Tavern looking south, another view looking north. And in the upper left-hand corner, oops, what happened? In the upper left-hand corner is the Mission Pine restaurant at the end of town going toward Warm Springs. 1970 to 2000, in the early 1970s, the town got a new life. The Lincoln Center was remodeled and new businesses were added. The bicentennial celebration was in 1997, including a rededication of the Mission Church. The new fire station was built on Pine Avenue, and the old station became a local history museum. This was also the beginning of the new international community. Almost all available land in the area was filled in with new and developing houses. This is an aerial from 1995 that shows the infill. It's sort of not too clear, but this is Saber Cat. It was the only green area really, and this is 680. And then this is Washington Boulevard, I believe. Yeah, going down. Philip and Louise Holmes came to Mission San Jose in 1968 to work for the Fremont Unified School District. Philip first recruited teachers for the expanding school district, and later he served as principal of Mattis and Gomes Elementary Schools. Louise taught at, and here's a picture of Louise. She taught at Glenmore Elementary. Phil's love for history led him to teach local history classes, to join and become an active member of the historical societies also. He was the first president of the Museum of Local History. He wrote local history articles in the local newspapers for more than 25 years, in addition to writing his books. Dion and Lila Bringhurst came to Mission San Jose to set up Dion's dentistry practice and to start a family. Years later, Lila took her 6 children on a summer road trip across the country for a bicentennial year, and she fell in love with the country. When they returned, she was determined to find out more about the history of her hometown in Mission San Jose. Then there was no stopping her. The family took on the project to move and restore St. Joseph's Rectory, which is now located at right next to the Museum of Local History. Lila was an activist, a community leader, historian, and philanthropist who was very involved in her church. She wrote a weekly column in the Argus and co-authored a book with Lauren Hansen about the history of the Mormon pioneers who came on the ship Brooklyn. She spearheaded and collaborated with others to preserve and restore the Mission Church and other historical landmarks. Lila was active in the Mission San Jose Rotary, the Chamber of Commerce, her church, and she was especially proud of her work on the committee to accomplish the work of having gutters, curbs, and sidewalks added to the downtown Mission San Jose. As we recognize the history and lives of those who have touched Mission San Jose through the preservation of old and the blending of the new, and through connections with others, Mission San Jose has two special places that recognize the people who were here before the Americans, the Mexicans, and the Spaniards. Ohlone College and the Ohlone Cemetery are reminders to us of those who were here before. Philip Galvin, which is a picture of him here, and Sarah, his wife, came to Mission San Jose in 1972. Philip was in charge of maintenance and groundkeeping for the Sisters of the Holy Family. He was a descendant of Ohlone and also of Patwan, Plains Miwok, and Bay Miwok Indian tribes, and also a Mexican heritage. His son, Andrew Galvin, said, but culturally, Phil, my dad, was Ohlone because everything we do is rooted in our Indian ancestry. He was known as Mr. Ohlone. Phil led a movement that saved the Ohlone Cemetery from being paved over by the construction of the 680 freeway and Paseo Padre Parkway. The cemetery is still located on Washington Boulevard between these two intersections. In 1971, the cemetery's deed was turned over to the Ohlone Indian Tribe Incorporated, a nonprofit group Philip formed to preserve the land. Andy Galvin said, it's the only piece of Californian mission property returned to the Catholic Church to a group of Indians that I'm aware of. Philip also fought to secure the name of Ohlone College to honor the heritage of this special place. I chose to tell something about these people, though brief, because their stories touched me and their lives represent a sliver of time of how Mission San Jose changed. I knew some personally, or I felt I knew them through people who knew them, or through the writings of Philip Holmes, Robert Fisher, Lila Bringhurst, and others. My immersion into this overview of history of Mission San Jose has ignited a drive in me to learn more about the fascinating stories that have yet to be uncovered. Since this talk, I've been in further contact with Patty and John Weed to find out their story, Kathy O'Connor, who's a great granddaughter of Laura Sanak, and people after the talk came up to me with more information that can be researched. This is just the beginning of this discovery of new stories that are in Mission San Jose. Thank you.
I think at this point we can open up to questions. Everyone unmute and ask Patricia.
I've got one, Tim and Patricia. I understand that when the Montenegros and his son-in-law owned Palmdale, that at one point in time it went into bankruptcy, and to avoid losing the house, he moved it across Mission Boulevard onto the Mission property so that it wouldn't be taken over by the bankruptcy court. Is there any truth to that?
Oh, yes, for sure. That's exactly it. He was going bankrupt, and he sold off all of his property. And actually, what's really interesting is the Gallegos family, two members of the Gallegos family continued to live there and died there, and they're in the Mission Cemetery. Yes,
And the other thing I heard was that the cemetery, the St. Joseph Cemetery down on Mission Boulevard, down a mile or two south of the of the mission, was bought and built by the Montenegros and the Gallegos to bury Mr. Montenegro, who had been, I believe, the president or something of Costa Rica or something, and then had been taken over in a coup and had to leave the country in haste and ended up in Mission San Jose.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. And then he was exhumed and brought back to Costa Rica. I think he was the second president. And actually, when you go to the cemetery, there's a family plot there, and people from the family are buried there. And there's a recognition that he was taken back to Costa Rica, but he's there there's a recognition of that he was there. Yeah. And the other thing is that I really noticed is that, when this family came, it was the Montenegro money that funded all of this. And then when they started going bankrupt, the family moved in different places, and the Salazar winery was actually that was the son-in-law from one of the daughters that his name was Salazar. He had married Gallegos' daughter. So, and like I said, some of the Gallegos people, they're all buried in Mission San Jose. And I actually talked to Patty Weed, and she remembered talking to Teresa Gallegos, and she had some really delightful stories to talk about her, who lived right across the street from them, right, John? Anyway, Teresa Gallegos lived across the street from where the Weeds have their home.
I think I'm on now. Teresa Gallegos and Bob Gallegos lived in the home that had been relocated next to the church. And then
Yeah.
they sold the 11 acres to St. Joseph's Parish for $110,000.
Wow. Wow. So they had 11 acres. That's great. I'm going to have to interview you and your sister and everything, because you have a wealth of information. We're going to have to do some more families in the future. That would be great. Anybody else? Well, I guess that's it then, huh?
Well, thank you very much. And I appreciate it. I would like to thank Paul Sethi for helping organize this. So Patricia and Al Menard for putting out the newsletter. And the Washington Township Historical Society continues. And our next meetings we'll try to arrange and to hopefully get beyond this COVID-19 mindset and have a much more robust presentation groups. But we do have it recorded, and that's a great value to the community and to the youth. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Patricia. It was a good talk.
Okay, thank you. Good seeing everybody.